Welcome, everyone, and I'm really looking forward to this. So welcome to all. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just in the interest of time, move us ahead, and I hope you enjoyed that. So want to do another little bit of an exercise with everyone, and it's change management. It's changing what we do, how we do it, how we think about things. That's part of change. So I have a little bit of an exercise for us to try. You'll need a piece of scrap paper or write on your hand or do something. But in that left-hand set of 9 dots, here is your challenge. I'd ask you to connect all of the 9 dots in that left-hand figure with 4 straight lines without lifting your pencil or pen or writing implement from the paper. So please just recreate that set of 9 dots. Take a minute or two, actually less than a minute, 30 seconds, and see if you can do that. 4 straight lines, connect all 9. Do not lift your pencil off the paper. And if you were able to do that, just type the word yes in chat. I was going to sing, what is that, the Jeopardy song? while we were waiting, but I'll just let you focus on this exercise for a minute. It looks like a couple of folks in the Q&A are responding, so we've got a couple that did it. It turns out, take another few seconds. That experience, having done this a lot, if you don't get it in the first 30 seconds, you won't. For those that did, now I'm gonna stretch it a little bit. Take the second middle set of 9 dots, connect them with 3 straight lines without lifting your pen or pencil from the paper. And if you can do that, type in yes, yes into the chat. And for those that didn't get to 4, it's like, who are you kidding? If you can't do it in 4, how can you possibly do it in 3? And then just for grins, the last set of 9 dots is do it in 1 line. So let me kind of take away the suspense, but hopefully you're feeling something like impossible, irritated, frustrated. If it can be done, I don't know how to do it. So here's how it works. The magic is you cannot do it within the frame that's kind of implied by the 9 dots. And in fact, you can solve this 4 different ways depending on which of the diagonal corners you start from. And so we've connected all 9 dots, 4 straight lines. You can just see that the pencil did not get lifted from the paper. So we had to break or challenge an assumption, which is staying inside the square. How do you do it in 3? Well, we have to bust another assumption, which is that you have to go through the center of the dot. And so it makes the lines go out longer. But in fact, I have connected 9 dots in 3 straight lines without lifting my pencil from the paper. Well, okay, Larry, now I'm getting something here. So how do you do it in 1? Who said it has to be a thin line? So as we go forward and think about change management and continuous improvement, how much of the work that we do as Lean Six Sigma practitioners is trying to help people see things in a different way, to understand that how data can inform things, the concepts of value and flow and pull can inform things that they're easy when we see them, but can be brutally difficult from some old mental models. Want to qualify a little bit of today. There are a couple of things that I just wanted to say that change management is not for our conversation. And the first is, I am not talking about change management as in documentation version control. Folks that have grown up in those worlds, in the technology world, maybe think, well, I know what change management is. If you have to make sure you get it from version 4.7 to version 4.7.2, yes, that is a kind of change management, not this one that I want to talk about today. Nor is it that we're all going to magically like drink something and love new changes. So that's not what this is about, nor is it its intent. Not realistic, nor practical, nor probably even very good business to believe that there's some magic formula that a change manager or a continuous improvement professional is going to do, that's going to take something that can be hard and difficult and make everybody just go, oh, I love it now. So if it's not those two things, let me share at least Larry's definition that is cobbled together from a bunch of other ones and say what I think it is. And it is a set of processes, tools, specific tools, and techniques. So there's kind of some methodologies and frameworks that are embedded in all of this that focus, and this is kind of the money piece. They're focused on the people side of change. And for those of us that are operating in project management kinds of environments or supporting those kinds of things, so yes, there is schedule and budget and scope and technology, and those are all really important. In fact, you'll see those things show up in our conversation. But this one is focused on the people side of change. And there's a so what? It's because it helps to better achieve, and I really want to call out this next phrase, and sustain over time. So once something's been actually initiated, once we've been through a DMAIC process, once we've been through a PDCA cycle, how many times does it just kind of either gradually or drastically fall back to the old way? And when we kind of look at that and say, how come? Why did it not stick? It was because people had no ownership around it. They had no engagement in it. They didn't care about it. Their needs haven't been met because of that. And so as soon as the project manager or the black belt walked away to do the next thing, it's like, ew, wash our hands, and we're back to it. The final part of this objective or this definition, and again, there are a lot of other ones, but this one works, I hope, for me and for you. It's to meet other objectives. It's not change for change's sake. It's change so that we increase value, we decrease cost, we increase customer satisfaction, the business objectives of the change. Okay, so not version control, not love, but doing a better job of successfully meeting and sustaining over time the objectives of our continuous improvement efforts. So back to Slido, a chance to get you engaged again. This time you'll see that these should show up as a list or just scrolls of ideas. And so when we don't do it well, what does poorly implemented change look like? You know, think about the failed DMAIC process, if you will, or the PDA cycle that didn't accomplish the value we weren't able to get. Yeah, okay, good. And yes, oh, these are great. So not sustainable, chaotic, disgruntled employees is really a big one. Lack of trust is big. A mess. Yeah, it's not pretty. Oh, someone even has a pretty cool little, they managed to get a little emoji in there too. Not cohesive. Anxiety and churn. Churn can be in people. Churn can be in ideas. Yeah, conflict. Not rowing the same direction is, I think, a really interesting one. So lots of people can be rowing hard. It's not that people aren't working. They might be working really hard. But the fact is, because those oar strokes are not aligned, the kind of the boat's going in a circle. Regression, and interesting again, because you have different people that are contributing these, but it's, everyone, it's like, no, it regresses backwards, it goes backwards. So it seems that across all of us, as continuous improvement folks and change management folks, these are pretty universal. And so they're there for, they do happen for good reasons. So with these, and let me just give you another minute or two if anyone has one that you haven't had a chance or that seems like they're different than the ones that have been showing up on your screen. Ooh, regret. Good one. Yeah, lack of leadership. That is a huge one, and we'll talk about that a little bit. High cost, resource consuming. Another, again, two different ways of coming at many of those same things. It's expensive to have to do it again, right? When it's not sustained or there's a lot of resistance, there's a lot of fight, so you have to fight to get it. It falls off. You got to try to re-implement it. That's, scrap and rework in our CI language. All right, so again, I want to try to be mindful of time, so I'm going to say thank you for these and go ahead and move us forward. So a point that I'd like to try to make to these is that there's a couple of ways that you might think about these. Some, and the ones I think we mentioned were pretty obvious, right? That you're going to see resistance. Things like turnover, workarounds, conflict, us and them. One that the couple that I want to call out though there's some other costs, and for those of you familiar with the iceberg analogy, sometimes the biggest problems are under the surface and not easily visible. And things like the opportunity cost. When we're going through all the things that you were listing, what were we not able to do because we had to deal with the conflict, because we had to deal with the poor morale, because we had to deal with the suboptimal use of resources, because we had to do it again? One that I don't think I saw, and again, and thank you all because they were flowing quickly, is what is the impact on the company or the team or the system or your function's reputation or your culture? They messed it up again. I mean, when you start to hear that, it's like, see, I told you it would happen. Those people don't know what they're doing, or whatever language and form that might take in your organization. And one that I think many of you did call out is, what does that say about the credibility of the leadership of the organization? Can we trust them? Do we believe they'll do what they'll say they're going to do? So when they say, trust me, this one is different. Yeah, we're CI people. We use data. I have data that says the last 4 changes we made were not very successful, nor were they sustainable. Why would I possibly believe why should I believe that you would be the 5th one? So real costs, both the obvious ones we named, plus maybe some that are a little bit less obvious and no less important for us to think about. So this change management stuff can matter. Let me show you some data. Because the company, and by the way, I'll use the Prosci model They're a research-based company. They've been around for a long time. They do huge best practices, research type stuff on what works and doesn't. They have a model, we'll call it, you'll see it, ADKAR as a framework. They are not the only model. Other people will argue they're not the best. I, through a career in change management, can talk to you about Cotter and change acceleration process and William Bridges. But I think for our work today, ProSci is as good as any, and they have data to prove their models. So let me just, without going way deep into the data, what they said were, if you think about our standard, some of our standard measures of success, which is, did you achieve your objectives? Companies that managed change well, as identified by people in the company, saying, well, how did they do? Yeah, they did a good job of managing this one. 6 times better at achieving their objectives than when those same survey results came back and said, nah, they did a terrible job. Not quite that dramatic, but guess what? It was better for budget. So from poor to good, is a range of almost 30% better when change is managed well. And, in our, scope, schedule, budget, right? Again, 50% increase from 14 to 69% in terms of schedule attainment. And if you think about it, if there wasn't the things that you had all been putting up there on that Slido, without fighting through the resistance, without having to do the rework, with optimal use of your resources and time, yeah, you're going to get it done faster because you're not going to have to undo it, redo it, and fix it because it was done poorly. So the ProSci Best Practices Manual is about that thick, 500 and 600 pages. Again, you could probably get your hands on that or some distillation of that. But for us, we're data people. I do want you to see that there is, I believe, credible data that doing this stuff well contributes to the bottom line. So for those that say, oh, change management's the soft stuff, please refer to page 9. So as I dive into just to give you an idea of, again, ProSci's view of the world, not the only one. What I like about what success means is it is pretty good. This is what I think is traditionally from a project management or continuous improvement, right? All of us are here to do it on time, on budget, get the return we wanted. They call it the change triangle. And their sense, ProSci, is that it requires leadership, project management, change management, and I would lump or cluster continuous improvement as groups, that operate in that same kind of sphere around the perimeter of this. That's what success is. It's not just one thing. It's making sure we can get to all of those and sustain them. And the way they do that is the recognition that person by person, then combined into groups, teams, functions, and organizations, start at a place, their current state, right? Again, we get that in whether you're in a lean or Six Sigma or any kind of continuous improvement capacity. And the end state is something different and hopefully better. And we need to get us and them from where they are to where that better place is. And they use a model or a framework they call the ADKAR framework. So ADKAR is, I'll give you the kind of the 2-second version of it. Starts with awareness. What is the change? How big is it? Why now? My bad. You know, we've always talked about this. How come we're spending time and effort on it now? What's the risk of not changing? So it's really kind of some of those scoping, getting people started. The ProSci assumption is you can't change if you don't know what the change even is. The D for desire says we each need to make a commitment. We need to understand what's in it for me, what's in it for the customer, what's in it for the company, what happens. Because if I don't care about it, I'm not going to be very motivated to engage and do the work required to make the change happen. The K in ADKAR framework is knowledge. Okay, I understand what it is. I'm willing to do what I need to do to kind of, you know, I understand why it would be good, but what do I have to do differently? What new processes do I need? What new technology do I need? What new understandings do I need in order to win in this new thing that we're trying to reach? So that is often the world of, air quotes, training or learning, right? That's where we need to give people skills and experience so that we equip them for success. That would be like asking somebody, it's like, hey, you have to go do a designed experiment now. Use Taguchi. And they're going, I can't even spell Taguchi. What is that? Right? I can get that maybe a designed experiment's the thing I should be doing, but you got to help me. Help me learn how to do that. And that second A is action or ability. And that is, can I got the textbook knowledge, right? I went through the class. I maybe did my helicopter experiment or my catapult experiment. But do I have the confidence to actually use what I learned in a more formal setting so that I can use it in the workplace? Shifting examples a little, I can give you a book on how to swim. You can pass the written test with 100%. But what happens when I throw you in the deep water in the pool? So having a lifeguard helps. Having a ring helps. Having some coaching helps. Having people, you know, starting you in the shallow water before we take you to the deep water helps. And so there's a recognition that we can't just pour training in somebody's ear and expect that they're going to be able to use it the way we need them to. Finally, the R in ADKAR, the reinforcement, everything I'm saying here is work. It's hard work in addition to all the other things that are going on. So how do we praise progress? How do we capture and amplify the small wins? How do we make sure to acknowledge the fact that this is hard work and say thank you for the people that are doing it? So we do this person by person, combining them into groups and teams and functions and organizations. And so in this kind of series of framework steps are the tools and processes and techniques that would drill down, you know, into the ProSci framework to be able to get that people side of change to achieve and sustain business outcomes. Manny, let me just check in with you. I've not been, the font's really small. Is there anything showing up on the screen that we need to be talking about, or should I just keep on rolling here?
Actually, Larry, there are a couple of questions here that we could go through. So, and I agree, the font is very small. It's strange that you can't increase it. But one question is, for the ADKAR model, how is desire fostered? Awareness, knowledge, action, reinforcement seem easy, but desire seems extremely internal. I guess, how do you develop it?
Okay, yes, thanks. Great question. And ProSci experience has a few different perspectives. The first one, which I actually find pretty refreshing, is ProSci is the first group that says You can't make them want to do it. Ultimately, a commitment has to come from the individual. And so we can create conditions and provide information that help encourage that desire, but we cannot mandate it. And being clear about what's in it for me, what's in it for the customer. Here are the positive consequences that accrue from doing this. Here are the negative consequences that might accrue from not doing it, are some of the tools that we use. Darrell Connor has a 4-block that he calls the opportunity grid. And on the one hand, across the columns would be pain and opportunity. And then along the rows are immediate and future. And he says, if you want to try to get desire, the best thing you can do is have current pain. Change now, or you'll immediately feel the consequence. It's a crisis. If the building is burning, everybody will be motivated to get out, right? They will desire that action will happen. If you go over here, current benefit. If we're on a 10-story building looking outside and there's a bag with $1 million of cash just kind of floating outside the window, if you can get to that bag of money, it's yours. People will move, right? They will be incredibly creative because the payoff is immediate. Change now to avoid future pain is Connor's third part of the quadrant for trying to help identify places for desire. So if you, talking to my high school or junior high school kid, if you don't go to college, you'll never have a great career. If you don't practice basketball, you'll never make it to the pros. And so to the extent that those messages are credible, that can be motivating and create desire. Turns out, interestingly, the hardest one, change now to accrue future benefit. You know, I would tell my teenage guys, you know, if you can just save 5%, 2% of your paycheck, $20 a month, when you retire, you'll have $500,000. They just laugh because they don't think they're going to live that long. And so that's not very motivating because the payoff is so far away. So a little bit of a longer answer, but I think that was a fabulous question and it was an opportunity. Again, Darrell Connor, another change management author. He talks about resilience to change. There's some really great stuff if you get a chance to see it. And hopefully that'll give some insight or a couple of tools or possibilities for you to consider around how to create desire. Okay, so with that one, there might be others, Manny, but let me go ahead and kind of move us forward again, and then we'll come back to any other questions. So
sure, absolutely.
So I guess I'm going to ask everybody now to kind of think about, with just that little bit of awareness of the model or framework and what we've talked about. Now look at DMAIC. And what I'd ask you to do, this time we'll come out of Slido, but I'll just ask you to use the chat inside the GoToMeeting, just because we can change it up a little bit. Where do you see connections? What do you see as relationships between this ADKAR framework and what we would do in the Six Sigma world of DMAIC? So just take a minute, and it could be one-for-one kind of, well, the A equals something, if that's where you go. It could be more broad. They're both structured processes. You can't be wrong. But just to kill a few brain cells, how does this connect to those of us that are Six Sigma practitioners? And put those in the chat as you think about them.
Somebody says A equals D and M, ability equals improve, A equals M and A, action equals I. R equals C, A equals D. He said there's a one-to-one
Okay, so
match for
there's,
each of them, somebody else has.
okay,
Um,
cool.
so
Were there
anyway,
anyone?
I mean, there's different answers, but those are some of the more common ones, I would say.
Okay, no, that's great. I see something that says breaking down larger into defined and achievable steps. Okay, cool. So, folks, I think that these are all great answers. Some things that I was thinking about, which doesn't make them right, but just to see how they fit with yours. As you think about the define phase, that's where we're trying to figure out scope, right? What is this thing? And so that seems like a pretty good fit with awareness, right? So from a people standpoint, as we're trying to frame what this thing is, it's recognizing that our different audiences and stakeholders, they need to know what it is. What is this? What is it not? And so I think all of our conversations when we're doing project charters and trying to come up with scope and scale, that's really the work of awareness, is making sure that the folks who need to know it, that's where it starts. And I think very often, we as continuous improvers, we spend our time drafting those charters, haggling over scope, but we get so close to it, we forget that all those other people out there who are going to have to live with it don't know, because they weren't a part of our meeting. So this awareness piece, as you think about it, and we're working through DMAIC type processes, please be sure that as you start to develop and come up with those answers, that you're sharing them with other impacted stakeholders. If we look at measure and kind of, again, just maybe kind of try to bounce it up against desire a little bit, that is where kind of what's in it for me, right? We do stakeholder analysis, or we're doing voice of the customer analysis when we're in those phases, trying to get some data to say, how big is this problem anyway? And in many cases, that information, this is how big it is, that's creating the consequences that can help drive the desire. What is the return on investment, right? What's the positive consequence? How much can we save if we fix this? Those are the messages that, so long as they get out to the people, can really help, give them the data they need to make that commitment decision, that desired decision. We think about analyze, right? We're going deep. We're trying to find root causes of things. Well, how about the root causes of resistance, right? As we've been listening to people, what is it that from the customer's point of view, if we want to go, so we go to lean in the notion of where the value is, where the issues are, not what we think they are as continuous improvement professionals, what's the customer's thing? What the impacted person sitting in the customer service cubicle, what the middle manager is going to be thinking. They, can we put ourselves in their shoes and get some of those kinds of data to think that deeply? Because in that, as we go to improve, as we go to implement, as we go to create the knowledge and the knowledge and ability to give them the new tools, then we're doing the same thing. So we're solving the technical problem while we're also trying to solve the knowledge, skills, coaching, reinforcement, patting them on the, saying thank you for the work they're doing as they go through those learning curves. And control, evaluating, monitoring, right? There's reinforcing. That's again, that similar thing of sustaining change over time. And that's what our control systems are there to do. But if we don't say thank you, if we don't recognize and praise performance, if we don't help people understand what they did well, if we don't teach them how to fish, then it's not going to be sustainable. So those are just a few things you might think about as being where, and again, a way that this soft skill of change management intersects with our Lean Six Sigma DMAIC project work, to good advantage for both. In fact, so then let me just kind of then ask you to do the same kind of exercise and then focus for just a minute on Lean. We have all of our tools of pull and push and poka-yoke and value added and 7 wastes and PDCA. As you think about that whole constellation, that whole mindset, where do you think there might be some connections between those things and this ADKAR people side of change framework? So take a minute, if you'd put those into the chat or question box as well, that would be great.
So Larry, just to point out while we're waiting, somebody said that that they think that you should be using ADKAR in every phase. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, great point. And in fact, you know what, we can even leverage that point. Thank you, Manny, for surfacing that one. PDCA, one of the things that I think is probably the best, is a really powerful connection between these two things, is the fact that they're both cycles. And they both kind of iterate, much the way in an agile framework, we do an iteration, we stop, we learn, we listen to the customer, we say, ooh, are we in the right direction or where do we pivot? We do it again. So we're acting fast, we're learning fast. This ADKAR cycle, to the person's point, is exactly the same, right? No two people are the same, and they might be great swimmers, but they're terrible pole vaulters. So it's not like we get to, people are great on Excel, but they're terrible on PowerPoint. So this notion that we're continuously kind of working our way through these things in cycle, paying attention, learning, adapting as we go, always with the end in mind, which is that triangle there on the right side, that we're there to create and sustain successful business outcomes. Again, I think I can actually see this one. And again, somebody who had mentioned it's taking big things and breaking them down into smaller digestible pieces that we can then try to manage, right? We can talk about them. It creates a shared language, vocabulary, way to make sure that we're sequencing things both effectively and efficient. So thank you all for those. We've actually been talking about these kind of as we've been going, but just to kind of double click on the idea that each of these things, whether it's the Lean toolbox or the Six Sigma toolbox, the change management toolbox, we all have tools and they're all brought to bear on a situational basis, right? Based on the right tool for the right job. But where there's a charter, change management uses a change blueprint. Where we do voice of the customer analysis, in change management, we do stakeholder analyses. In, where we might do kind of some of the lean concepts of 7 wastes and 5 whys, we're going to talk about resistance and sponsorship. Where we have an implementation plan in the improve phase of DMAIC, ProSci actually says, you know what, you should have tactical implementation plans for how will you communicate? How will you coach? How will you manage resistance? How will you manage sustainment? So it's that same kind of thing. And so if you're working with a change manager, there can be this and should be, and I hope you'll start asking about, wow, what tools do you have in your toolbox that we can leverage that will help us with ours? There are as many, for those of us, and again, who work in this Lean Six Sigma world, there are dozens, hundreds of tools available. Some simple some fairly specialized and complex. The same thing is true for change management. And to get into those tools way beyond the scope of this talk, but just know that they're out there and available for you to explore and research as you might want or need to. So let me kind of bring our time as we start to kind of sneak up. I'm looking over because I don't have a good clock. Oh, 7 minutes. Okay, I think we should be okay. So telling you what I told you, or trying to boil the ocean a little, you know, the continuous improvement and people focus probably work hand in hand to help us accomplish sustainable goals. There is data. I showed you those charts. I think your own experience, hopefully, it kind of helps you agree that paying attention to these people is good business. And it gives demonstrable results in faster, more effective, more efficient, and more sustainable project attainment. That each has tools, and the tools fit well as you need to use them. And if I would summarize those three things, if you thought about, you know, our Lean Six Sigma tools, the analytical, tactical, project management stuff over here, and the people tools over here as kind of 3D glasses. If you cover up one eye, just look at it through our continuous improvement lens, you see a lot of cool stuff and it looks good. If you look at it just through the other eye of people, that's really valuable too. But when you have them both open, you get this three-dimensional, holistic view that really does help you see some things in a different way, remember 9 dots, than you could before, because it helps us challenge some assumptions. So I'm gonna, just because I wanna make sure I get through one more slide, and then I'll come back and we'll see how much time is left for questions. I leave you with one more gift, and this one is in your handout as well, which is if you look at the boxes in yellow and say in this model, to have effective and sustainable change, you need to have a vision, what it is, the skills to be able to do it, the K, then the knowledge and ability, the incentive, right? That's our Darrell Connor 4-block thing. You need to have the resources. You need to have the money, the skills, the tools, the technology. You need to have a plan. And I think several people commented on the structured approaches to change. And finally, you need to have a culture that rewards caring about the people, and not all of them do. When you have all those things, I think you maximize your chance for effective change. But look what happens in the view of this checklist if you have everything except the vision. You might have confusion because I've gotten doing all this other stuff, but I'm not quite sure where I'm going. If I have everything but the skills, boy, I know where I'm going. I love this, but I don't think I can do it, can create some anxiety. Incentives. I can do all that stuff, but why should I? You know, if there are no positive or negative consequences, if I don't understand why it matters, yeah, I might do it, but not going to be any particular urgency about it. You know, and if I have all those things, but I need a tool, but I don't have the tool, right? I need a powerful computer, but I don't have one. That's just frustrating. If I don't have a plan, I'm working hard, I'm doing what I'm doing, but chances are, you know, it's going to be a bunch of false starts. That's where the oar strokes are not aligned. And instead of going straight down the river, we might kind of start bouncing off the shorelines. And without a culture that says, yeah, people matter, the people side of change matters, it's like, yeah, who am I in all of this? So I'm doing it, but it's going through the notions. I'm not going to ever have myself engaged and committed to this. So it'll be somebody else's change, not owned by me. And when those things happen, the ability to sustain it, especially when times get rough, can really be a challenge. So, interesting checklist as you're in major projects in your work. Do you have all those things? Might help you focus, over and above the ProSci stuff, which is good, to help you say, why am I not getting results that I'm hoping I'll get? So with that, let me put this one on the screen just in case you want to continue a conversation. I'm happy to do it. You see a couple of books that I've been very privileged to co-author. The first one, and well, both of them kind of look at organizations as complex adaptive systems as opposed to complicated mechanical systems. People just don't work the way we always want them to. And so each of these is a way to, that thought partners and I have tried to figure out how do you make change happen in a world that's messy like that, when people just don't act the way that you think they should.
Thank you again. And I'm sure people will be connecting with you on LinkedIn if they haven't already.
Yeah, perfect. So again, thanks to all of you for spending some time with this. The change management and continuous improvement perfect together was kind of the title slide, and I think that's the thought that I'd like to leave all of you with. I think that change management, CI, complementary tools, I hope we can expand each other's capabilities and capacities because it's better business. So thanks to all. Enjoy the next parts of your day, and feel free to reach out if you'd like to chat.
Folks, thanks. We know that you can spend time in a lot of ways. Appreciate you spending the last hour or so with us. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care now.